feedback. You ever notice how a simple sentence can completely shift your mood? You're going about your day, maybe not expecting much, and then someone says something, just a few words, and suddenly feedback, your chest softens, your guard drops, and you feel something warm rise up in you. That's the power of words. And when it comes to relationships, especially romantic ones, words are everything. Feedback, they're not just noise or fluff or filler. The right words spoken at the right time. Feedback have the power to create a sense of connection so strong it can melt even the most guarded heart. A lot of people underestimate how impactful their words are, especially in relationships. Feedback. We often get caught up in what we're doing, making plans, buying gifts, solving problems, going through the motions, and we forget to really say what we feel. Feedback. We assume our partner knows we love them, that we're grateful, that we care. But you know what? People don't just want to be loved. They want to feel loved. And one of the simplest feedback, most powerful ways to make someone feel loved is with your words. Now, let me say this clearly. It's not about being overly poetic or dramatic. Feedback. This isn't about crafting the perfect letter or memorizing lines from a movie. It's about authenticity. It's about those small feedback. Real moments where you let your guard down and say what you feel without agenda. Feedback. Without pretense. When you whisper something meaningful, something true, it bypasses all the logical layers of the brain and goes straight to the emotional core. Think about it. Feedback. When someone looks you in the eye and says, "You make me feel safe," or "I'm so grateful for you," it doesn't just register as information. It lands. Feedback. It reaches that part of you that's been craving acknowledgement, craving closeness. And for him, this man you care about, those moments carry weight. Feedback. We sometimes assume men don't need that emotional affirmation. Maybe he seems confident or stoic or like he's got everything together. But trust me, that's just the surface. Underneath, feedback. There's a part of him that's quietly asking, do you see me? Do you really see me? This is where the power of whispered words comes in. Feedback. When you lower your voice and lean in literally or emotionally, it sends a message that what you're about to say is special, sacred, even. It becomes a moment of intimacy. Back. You could be sitting on the couch, walking through a crowd, or lying together in bed. And in that small pause, you whisper something that makes him stop and feel. Why is whispering so powerful? Feedback. Because it's intentional. You're not yelling for attention. You're not making a grand speech. You're choosing a private channel, one that only he gets to hear. And in doing that, feedback, you create a secret little universe between the two of you, one where connection is the currency. The truth is, we all want to feel chosen. Feedback. We want to feel like someone's looking at us, not just generally, but really looking like we matter enough. And for men, that kind of affirmation is often rare. Feedback. They might praise for achievements or for what they provide, but not always for who they are. Model feedback. So when you speak to that part of him, the man underneath the armor, you're doing something most people don't to feedback. You're meeting him at his most human level. And this doesn't mean you need to be constantly offering compliments or trying to guess the perfect thing to say. It just means being present. Feedback. Noticing the little things, picking up on his effort, acknowledging what he brings into your life, saying feedback. Yeah. You always know how to make me feel better. Or I feel so lucky when I'm around you. Or even just, you matter to me.
These aren't lines.
They're truths. We model feedback. But what makes them melt worthy isn't just the truth. They've heard truths before. It's the delivery. It's when you say it in a moment where he's not expecting it. When it's quiet feedback. When there's no noise, no pressure. Just you offering a little window into how you really feel. So many relationships falter not because the love isn't there, feedback, but because it isn't expressed in ways that land. We hack waiting for the right time or assuming the other person already knows. But love isn't something you set and forget. Feedback. It's something you affirm over and over again in small, meaningful ways. That's the magic of words, especially whispered ones. Feedback. Because whispered words don't just fill silence. They create intimacy. They invite the other person closer. They say feedback. This is just for you. And when those words are filled with genuine appreciation or vulnerability, they can disarm even the most emotionally guarded man. Not because he's weak, feedback, but because finally, someone is speaking to the part of him that longs to be seen and valued. Feedback, without needing to earn it every time. When you learn how to use that power, when you choose words that connect rather than correct, feedback. Words that express rather than expect. You're not just building attraction, you're building a bond. One that's quiet but strong. One that doesn't rely on fireworks to be felt, but instead feedback on moments so real and close they leave him breathless. Because when you whisper the right words, what you're really doing is whispering into his soul. And that's what melts him. Feedback. Most assume that men are simple, that their emotional needs are basic, maybe even minimal, that if they're fed, if they're appreciated now, and then if they get physical affection, feedback. But the truth is far more layered than that. See, most men grow up with an unspoken rule book that teaches them to downplay their feelings, to push vulnerability aside, feedback, to act like they've always got everything under control. And while that exterior might look confident, even stoic, underneath, feedback. There's often a much more complex emotional world that rarely gets seen, let alone understood. This is where so many relationships start to miss the mark. Feedback. Because we tend to approach men based on the version of themselves they present to the world, not the version that lives inside. The one that's been taught not to cry, not to lean on anyone. Feedback. Not to admit when they're scared, tired, or hurting, that inner part of him. That's the part that melts when you speak to it directly. When you don't just see the man on the surface, feedback, but the one behind the curtain, the wonders, just like the rest of us, if he's truly enough. It's not that he doesn't have emotions. He does. But often, feedback. He's learned to feel them in silence, to wrestle with them in private. And that creates a strange dynamic, especially in romantic relationships. Feedback. Because while women often express their emotions more openly, men are usually sitting on feelings that have no outlet. They want to connect. They want to be reassured. Feedback. They want to feel loved, not just through what you do for them, but through how you see them. But they don't always know how to ask for that. So what happens? He waits for a safe moment to feedback, a moment when his guard drops, when he feels like he won't be judged for needing something emotional. Feedback. That's when he becomes open to hearing the very words that might otherwise bounce off his arm back. Words like, I see you, or you don't have to do it all on your own, or simply, I appreciate you. In those moments when he finally lets someone in, feedback. Those won't just feel nice, they feel like oxygen. And here's the thing, it's not about making him feel strong. Feedback. It's about letting him feel he's seen, not for what he provides or what he achieves, but for who he is when no one's looking. That's the piece most men rarely get to experience. And when they do, feedback, it changes everything. You know, I talk to so many women who ask, why doesn't he open up more? Why doesn't he let me in? And my answer is always the same: feedback. It's not that he doesn't want to. It's that he's been conditioned, not told. He's been told through culture, through family, feedback, through countless experiences, that expressing vulnerability is a risk, that it might make him look weak, that it might make someone lose respect for him. So if you want him to open up, feedback, to truly connect on that deeper level, the most powerful thing you can do is to become the exception to that rule. The person who sees his strength, and his softness. Feedback. The one who doesn't punish his openness, but rewards it, who makes space for it. Feedback. Because once he feels that safety, once he knows that letting you in won't cost him anything, he'll begin to show you parts of himself that no one else gets to see. And when he does, feedback. You have a rare opportunity, a moment to say the kinds that reach him at his core. Not just compliments, not just encouragement, feedback, but emotional truths that speak to that hidden part of him that's rarely nourished. And that's when the magic happens. This is why timing and tone are everything. You don't need to push him to be vulnerable. You just need to recognize those quiet moments when he is and meet him there. Maybe it's after a tough day, model feedback. Maybe it's when he's quietly reflecting, or when he does something thoughtful and doesn't draw attention to it. That's your window. That's when you lean in and say something that tells him, feedback. I see all of you, not just the parts you put on display, but the ones you keep tucked away. Feedback, hoping someone might notice. When that happens, when you acknowledge his emotional world rather than avoid it, you create something few people ever do. Feedback. You become the person he doesn't need to pretend around, the one place he doesn't have to perform. And for a man who's carried the pressure of being strong, being steady, feedback, being everything to everyone, that is what makes him melt. Not because he's fragile, not because he's needy, but because for the first time in a long time, he feels like he can just be. Feedback. And that feeling, that's rare, that's unforgettable, that's what makes you different. Feedback. So let's talk about the words themselves, the three little words that can completely shift how he feels, how he sees you, and how connected he feels in the relationship. Feedback. You might think you already know what they are. Most people do. Naturally, we go straight to, I love you. And yes, those words are powerful. They carry weight. They matter. Feedback. But there's another set of words, equally short, just as heartfelt, that hit in a completely different way. Words that many men hear far less often, but when they do, they remember it. Feedback, not just in the moment, for days, sometimes forever. Those words, I appreciate you. That's it. 3 simple words, not pudic, not overly romantic, but when you say them and mean them, feedback. They land in a way that cuts straight to the emotional core. And here's why appreciation speaks directly to the part of him that's usually in motion, the part that's trying, providing feedback. Supporting, showing up even when it's hard. And most of the time, he's doing that quietly without asking for anything back. Feedback. A lot of men go through life wondering if what they're doing is enough. Even the ones who seem confident on the outside, they'll push themselves at work, they'll show up in relationships. Feedback. They'll carry burdens they don't talk about because that's what they believe they're supposed to do. And often they're not doing it to get recognition. Feedback. When they don't get it, when nobody pauses to say, hey, I see you and what you do matters, over time, it creates a feeling of emotional distance. feedback, like they're functioning in the background of everyone else's life. That's why appreciation is so powerful, because it interrupts that pattern. It says, you're not invisible. Feedback. You're not taken for granted. I see the effort. I feel it. And I'm better for it. And the magic in this phrase isn't just the words themselves, it's the intention behind them. If we model feedback, it's when you say them, it's saying it not out of obligation, but out of genuine recognition. Maybe it's when he takes the time to listen to you vent, feedback, without trying to fix anything, or when he remembers something small that matters to you, or even after a long day when you know he's exhausted, feedback, and he still shows up with presence instead of checking out. In those moments, I appreciate you becomes more than a compliment. It becomes a form of intimacy. Feedback. It comes a moment where he feels like everything he's doing, everything he's carrying is not just but you valued, and that can be emotional fuel for a man. Feedback, especially one who doesn't always have the language to ask for that kind of affirmation. Now, here's the subtle but important difference between appreciation and other expressions of love. Telling someone, I love you, is beautiful, but over time it can become habitual. Sometimes it's set out of rhythm, out of routine, but appreciation is specific. It's intentional. Feedback. It's tied to something real. So when you look him in the eye and say, feedback, I appreciate how patient you were with me earlier, or I appreciate you showing up the way you did this weekend. He knows you're really seeing him, not just loving him in general. Feedback, but appreciating who he is, you in action. That's what hits different. That's what melts him. Feedback, because you're not praising a version of him that lives in your head. You're responding to the man right in front of you as he is, and that's rare. It also builds trust. Feedback. When a man feels appreciated, he lets his guard down. He starts to feel safe. He wants to give more because he knows it matters, not just in a transactional sense, but an emotional one. Feedback. He sees that what he brings to the relationship isn't just useful, it's meaningful. It deepens the connection. Feedback. It creates that quiet bond that doesn't be spoken about constantly because it's felt so strongly. And the beautiful part is appreciation doesn't have to be loud. Feedback, it doesn't need to be dramatic. Sometimes the most powerful version of it is in a whisper hymn when you're close quiet and you just say, I appreciate you. No build up. Feedback, no explanation, just letting it sit there between you. He'll remember that, especially if it comes in a moment where he wasn't expecting it. Because in those moments, it feels real. Feedback. It feels earned. That's how you cut through everything else. That's how you stand out. Because most people don't take the time to this. Most people forget. They wait for big gestures, feedback, big events to say something heartfelt. But real intimacy, real connection, it happens in the small, intentional moments back. And what you'll find is that the more you speak to that part of him, the part that's striving, showing up, giving, you create a loop of emotional safety. He begins to trust that with you. Feedback. He doesn't have to perform. He just has to be himself. And that's what makes a man open up, stay connected, and want to give even more feedback. Because when you whisper, I appreciate you, what you're really saying is, I see your heart, and I don't take it for granted. Feedback. You can say all the right words in the world, but if you say them at the wrong time or in the wrong way, they'll fall flat. Worse, they might even be misunderstood. Timing and delivery matter. Feedback. In fact, they matter just as much as the words themselves. Feedback it. Think that there's a world of difference between saying, I appreciate you in the middle of an argument versus saying it in a quiet feedback, intimate moment when he's least expecting it but needs to hear it the most. Same words, totally different impact. Feedback. We sometimes get so focused on what we want to say that we forget to pay attention to who when we say it and who how we deliver it. That's where the magic either lives or dies. Feedback. You create emotional connection by rushing it or forcing it. It has to come naturally in a moment where the words feel like a gift rather than a demand or a distraction. Feedback. When someone whispers something meaningful to you, it immediately changes the dynamic. It pulls you in. You lean closer, both physically and emotionally. Back. Whispering lowers the volume of the world around you. It creates an immediate sense of privacy and intimacy, even in a crowded space. Feedback. That's why whispering those 3 words, I appreciate you, works so well when done at the all right moment. It feels sacred, like a secret that only the 2 of you share. Feedback. And that's exactly what you want to create. Those little private universes that only exist between you and him. It's not about making a grand gesture. It's about taking a simple feedback, sincere message and placing it gently in his hands at a time when he'll actually you receive it. That could be when he's relaxed, when he's feeling a little uncertain. Feedback. Or even when he's just done something full that you want to quietly honor. It doesn't need to be a dramatic moment. It just needs to be real. Let me give you an example. Feedback. Let's say he's had a tough day. He's not saying much, but you can tell something's weighing on him. That's not the moment to try to extract everything he's feeling. Feedback. That's the moment to sit, clutch his arm and gently say, I appreciate you. No follow-up, no expectation, just those words whispered softly. That's when it lands. feedback, because he's not being pressured to open up. He's been invited into emotional safety. Or maybe it's a day when everything's going right. He's been fun, present, relaxed. Feedback. He made you laugh or took care of something without being asked. Those moments often go unrecognized, and yet they're some of the most important ones. Feedback. That's your moment to slip those words in. Not as a reward, not to flatter him, but to reflect back the emotional value he brings into your life. That's what makes it stick. Feedback. That's what makes it real. It's also about tone. You don't need to perform these words, not a script. In fact, the more relaxed and sincere your delivery, the more powerful it is. Feedback. Sometimes just a soft smile, eye contact, and a calm voice can carry more weight than any dramatic statement. The best compliments feel like truths, not like lines. Back. They land because they're not trying too hard. They come from a place of emotional honesty. People think that creating intimacy is about always being emotionally deep or intense. But actually, it's about reading the moment. Emotional intelligence means knowing when someone is open, when they're closed, and when they're somewhere in between. And once you sense that window is open, feedback, that's when you gently step through, not with noise, not with pressure, the presence. We also tend to assume that men don't or need these moments as much as we do. That's just not true. Feedback. Men may not always express it the same way, but they crave emotional validation too. They want to feel safe, seen, and valued, but they're not going to tell you that directly, which means feedback. You have to listen with more than just your ears. You have to feel into it. Feedback. And when you get it right, when you catch one of those quiet moments and say something meaningful in a low voice, it does something to him. It cuts through all the noise in his mind. It tells him back without any fanfare, I get you. And the beauty is, it's not complicated. You don't need a perfect setup. You don't need the stars to align. All you need is a moment of connection, feedback, however small. It could be sitting side by side at a restaurant, watching a show on the couch, lying in bed after a long day. All it takes is presence, eye contact, feedback. A whisper that carries more meaning than a paragraph ever could. Because when the moment is right and your voice is soft and your words are true, that's when you reach him. That's when you melt him. Saying the words is powerful, but the real depth, the real impact comes when those words are backed by something even stronger in action. You can whisper, I appreciate you, all day long, feedback. But if your behavior doesn't match that energy, if your presence, your tone, your responses don't reflect it, those words start to lose their meaning. They become surface level, feedback. And in relationships, especially deep ones, we're not just looking for verbal connection. We're looking for consistency, for trust, feedback, for the feeling that what's being said can be felt in everything else too. You know what really gets into someone's heart? Feedback. When they realize that the way you treat them EOE aligns with what you say. It's when the energy behind your words continues after the moment has passed. It's the little gestures, feedback, the attention to detail, the presence you bring when there's nothing in it for you. That's when someone starts to believe you. That's when it starts to sink in, not just into his mind back, but into his nervous system. That's when the emotional walls begin to drop. So many people try to fix relationships through communication alone. And yes, feedback. Communication is essential, but if it's not paired with aligned behavior, it ends up feeling like a sales pitch. It doesn't create safety. It doesn't build intimacy. Feedback, it just creates more words. But when you say something meaningful and then go out and live it in your actions, that's what creates emotional memory. That's what he'll carry with him. Feedback. If you tell him you appreciate him, let it show in the way you look at him after he's done something thoughtful, even something small. Feedback. Let it show in how you respond when he's vulnerable, when he's trying maybe awkwardly to share something with you. Let it show in how you stand by him when he doesn't have the right words. Feedback. When he doesn't know how to ask for support, but his energy is clearly asking. That's the real gift. Not just that you said the right thing, but that you followed it with presence, softness, feedback, and care. Men especially are wired to respond to alignment, to notice when someone's consistent, not necessarily loud or expressive or theatrical, but real feedback. It's not about the big romantic gestures. It's about the way you turn toward him when he's quiet, the way you defend him when he's doubting himself. Feedback, the way you make space for him, not just when he's shining, but when he's struggling. Sometimes we think appreciation means praise, but it's deeper than that. Feedback. True appreciation is recognition. It's acknowledgement. It's saying in both words and behavior, you don't have to earn my warmth. Feedback, you already have it. And once he feels that, once he starts to trust that your appreciation isn't conditional or performative, that's when the relationship shifts. Feedback. That's when he starts to give more, not out of obligation, but because he wants to, because he feels safe enough to show up fully. That's why actions matter. Feedback. Because we're not just building moments, we're building patterns. You can have a beautiful interaction one night, whisper something heartfelt, and create a spark. But if the next day your energy is cold, distracted, or dismissive, that spark doesn't last. Consistency is what makes him feel secure. It tells him, feedback, that wasn't a moment, it's who I am with you. and that makes him open up in ways you've probably never seen before. You see this all the time. Couples who had passion back had excitement, but over time the words stopped matching the actions. One person says, I care, but never shows up, or says, you matter, but only when things are going well. Feedback. That gap between word and action creates mistrust. It's subtle at first, but it builds, and over time it becomes a wall. Feedback. That's why when you bridged gap, when you say something vulnerable and follow it with care, consistency, and attention, you create something that stands the test of time. Feedback. This isn't about being perfect. No one gets it right every time. It's about being real. It's about making sure that when you say feedback, I appreciate you, it's not just a whisper. It's something that echoes in how you move through the relationship every day, in how you show up when it's inconvenient. Feedback. And how you listen when he's struggling to speak, in how you support him in ways that matter to him, not just to you, because love that's felt is love that's shown. Feedback. And when your actions wrap around your words like that, when the softness of your voice is matched by the softness of your presence, he doesn't just hear you, he feels you, he trusts you. Model feedback. He lets you in. That's when the words go from sounding nice to meaning everything. If we model feedback, when you begin using your word tension, when you start whispering things like, I appreciate you at the right moment with the right energy, feedback, and up with genuine action, you start to see something shift, not just in him, but in the entire rhythm of your relationship. It's subtle at first. Maybe he holds you a little longer. Feedback. Maybe he reaches out more. Maybe he starts talking about things you didn't even know were on his mind. But over time, those small shifts turn into something much bigger. Feedback. What you're really creating is a ripple effect, because the words you whisper don't just affect the moment they're spoken in. They echo. They stick with him. Feedback. They replay in his head long after the conversation is over. Not in a performative way, not like a catchy phrase, but in the way emotional truth lingers. Feedback. And once he feels that a sense of being seen, valued, appreciated not just for what he does, but for who he is, it starts to change how he shows up too, not just with you, but with the world. Feedback. That's the beauty of emotional safety. When a man feels emotionally safe, he relaxes, he softens, he's no longer walking around in armor, bracing himself for rejection or criticism or pressure. Feedback. Instead, he begins to lead with more of his heart. He comes more generous, more communicative, more connected, not because you're pulling it out of him, feedback, but because he wants to bring that version of himself forward. You've shown him it's safe to do so. And it creates this beautiful loop. The more emotionally safe he feels with you, feedback. The more he gives, the more connection you feel. And then suddenly the relationship isn't something that constantly needs fixing or analyzing or working on. It just flows. Feedback. There's a natural ease because you're operating out of fear or performance. You're operating out of mutual appreciation, trust, and presence. That's when real intimacy happens. Feedback. Not the kind that's built on chemistry alone, not the kind that fizzles out after the honeymoon phase, the kind that grows deeper over time because it's rooted in emotional truth. Feedback. You've probably seen relationships where the couple seems effortlessly close. Not just physically, but emotionally. They finish each other's thoughts. They anticipate each other's needs. Feedback. They support one another without keeping score. That doesn't happen by accident. That comes exactly this. Being intentional with your words, your timing, your actions, feedback, and the way you nurture the emotional space between you. And it starts something so small. Whispering 3 words. Feedback. I appreciate you're not just handing him a compliment, you're building a foundation. You're planting seeds that over time grow into trust and then love, feedback, and then a kind of intimacy that most people only dream of. And here's the thing, when a man feels that with you, he won't want to let it go. Because for him, feedback, this kind of emotional recognition isn't something he gets every day. It's rare. It stands out, it's unforgettable. So the ripple effect goes beyond him too. It affects you, feedback. When you see him start to open up, when you feel him softening into the relationship, you begin to feel safer as well. You trust that he's there, not just physically, but emotionally. Feedback. You stop second guessing whether he cares. You stop trying to pull feelings out of him. Feedback. Because you've created a space where those feelings naturally rise to the surface. And this changes everything. The arguments become less defensive. The silences become less heavy. Feedback. The affection becomes more spontaneous. You no longer feel like you're navigating a maze. You're simply walking beside each other. There's this emotional rhythm, like a pulse. Feedback, running quietly through the relationship. It keeps you connected even when life is busy or stressful or imperfect. That pulse is built on the small moments, the whispered words, the subtle actions. Feedback, the day-to-day choices that say, I see you. I'm not taking any of this for granted. Most people think transformation in a relationship comes from some grand turning point. Feedback, but it rarely does. It comes from repetition, from choosing again and again to show up with love, with intention, and with care. That's what strengthens the bond. Feedback's what keeps the connection alive through all the seasons of life. And here's the most powerful part of all: when he feels appreciated, truly appreciated, feedback. And it just changes how he behaves. It changes how he feels about himself. You're not just influencing the relationship, you're influencing how he walks through the world. Feedback. You become that rare person who reminds his value, not by inflating his ego, but by connecting to something deeper, something real, feedback, something grounding. And when that happens, when he feels that kind of emotional gravity from you, he'll never forget it, because what you gave him wasn't just love, it was peace. It was home back. And that is what makes him melt.